Good morning, everybody. As we learn the chitas of today, we're holding in the portion of Pekudei, the last portion in the book of Shemais. We're going to do Chazak this Shabbos. We're holding on chapter 40, verse number 17. Vahi b'chodesh harishon. And it was in the first month, this coming Sunday, first month, Chodesh Nisan. B'chodesh harishon, in the first month, Bashana Shenis, in the second year, Be'echad lachodesh, in the first of the month, Hukam HaMishkan, the Mishkan was erected. Vayakam Moshe HaMishkan Yosef Moshe Rabbeinu erected the Mishkan. Vayitin es Adonov, and he set up its bases. Vayosim es Karoshav, he fitted its planks. As Karoshav, he installed his crossbars. Vayitin es Brichav, Vayakam es Hamudov, and he erected its pillars. Vayifresh es ha'oyel es al Mishkan, and he spread the tent of goats here over the tapestries. Vayasam es Mechsei oil, and he placed upon the ram skins and the tachash skins. Melamayla, kashatziva Hashem, as God commanded him. Now she said, "Vayish oil, referring to the sheets of goat hair." So the oil on Mishkan is the underneath one, and then ultimately there were three covers upon it. Verse number 20, and then he took the tablets, he put it into the Aron, into the ark. And then he positioned the poles al-Aron on the ark. He put the cover al-Aron on the ark, above it. As the Eidos, what is the Eidos? Rashi says, Aluchas is the tablets. Then he brought the Aron into the Mishkan. And then he put the curtains of separation. It covered it to protect it, so to say. It was a screen for this ark. God commanded Moshe. And then he placed the table in the tent of meeting on the northern side of the tabernacle. It's outside that curtain. Now she says, in the north half of the side of the structure. Yerech is, now she says, Yerech is a thigh. Its meaning is an uncle's translate tzida, is a side. Just like the thigh is on the side of a person. And then he set upon it the rain showbreads before God. God commanded Moshe. Then he took the meneda, he put it in the Neil facing the table, on the southern side of the base of Mikdash. And then he lit the lamps before God, as God commanded Moshe. And then he placed the golden altar in the tent of meeting before the curtain. Verse 27, and he burnt the incense offering on it, as God commanded Moshe. Now she says, Shachris v'Arvis, in the morning and the afternoon of the state, he must burn it in the morning when he cleansed out the lamps. Aaron must burn it when he kindled the lamps in the afternoon. And that completes the Chumash for today. Now we go to the Tanya of the day. Now we're holding in the middle, chapter 37. The Alter Rebbe ended off yesterday with the explaining why the mitzvah of tzedakah is it's called shkula keneged kol mitzvahs, is equal to all other mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe, and that's why it's mekarev esagula. It brings the redemption closer. We see at any rate that charity is superior to all other mitzvahs, including Torah study. But here one may object. We say it every day in our davening. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. The study of Torah outweighs all mitzvahs. So how do you put the two statements in the two statements together? They sound like they contradict one another. And they should Talmud Torah, including Sharia. So how can you reconcile these two statements? That Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam and then Shekulah Mitzvahs Tzedakah. So which is better? Everything is relative. So in a certain situation, Talmud Torah is greater. In a certain situation, tzedakah is greater. Talmud Torah is connected to not only to action. Talmud Torah is connected mainly to machshava and dibur, the learning of Torah. Study of Torah employs speech and thought. And the second you talk about speech and thought in comparison to action, that's pnimi, that's more of an inner concept than action, which is an outer concept. Shem levushim pnimim. They are inner garments, shal nefesh achiyunis, to the vital soul. So if you want to go deeper into something and connect in a deeper way, then that's Talmud Torah. There's no greater way of connection in a deeper way than the concept of learning Torah. Because the levushim pnimi, they call inner garments. Unlike action, which is external, thus only Torah study and not other mitzvahs in general can suffice the inner garments. So the inner garments is affected dafke by Torah, and especially by avonas haTorah, because that's when you're using your machshava, when you're using your thought, your avonas haTorah, your understanding of Torah is affected much more deeper when you have the concept of machshava. Because machshava is a much more deeper thing than a much more inner thing than a concept of action. Furthermore, the very substance and the essence of the intellectual faculty, just like your animal soul clothed itself into machshava and dibur, in action, it clothed itself also into Chabad. Your animal soul, my animal soul, also has Chabad, Chochmah Bina Das, wisdom, understanding of the Klippas Nega, of the vital soul. I act. So therefore, when I learn Torah, then I take my Chochmah Bina and Das, which is much more a pnimi, much more inner thing, much more godly thing, and I take that and I connect it. It's absorbed into the holiness. When one studies Torah, which concentration, special be'ion. When you study Torah, not just you just listen to the words, but when you use your seichel, when you use your Chochmah Bina and Das, when one uses his Havana and he understands the Torah, so now he has used it. He's taken the vital soul, which is connected to Chochmah Bina and Das, to wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and I clothed it with a knowledge of Torah. So the intellectual faculty applied to Torah study are absorbed into holiness in the midst of Torah study, and thereby ascends to the realm of Klippas Nega. A sense from the realm of which had previously belonged, being part of the vital soul, to the realm of holiness. So therefore, self-understood, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, in that concept, in the concept of affecting the inner things of life, the intellect of life, the concept of connecting the Havana in life, the Chochmah Bina and Das of my vital soul, is through Limud Torah, is through learning Torah, and not only just learning it, but comprehending the Torah. Although explained in chapter 12, that the Bain is capable of transforming into holiness only the garments of the animal soul, not the soul's faculty themselves. There's no contradiction here. The latter statement applies only to the midas, the emotional attributes of the animal soul. The Bain is indeed capable of transforming the midas to holiness. Chabad, however, can be transformed even by the Baini. Because the Baini, more a Baini learns Torah, the more he refines his seichel, his intellect will change. Maybe the midas will ultimately never change totally, but he can surely change the way he thinks. He can have what they call a paradigm shift. He can start thinking different. And the more Torah we learn, we change. We change our intellect. We change the way we think. We don't realize people think differently. More Torah they learn, they start to have a different thought process, and they start thinking different, and they start understanding things different. They look at things different because of the learning of Torah that they have acquired. So you can't transform even by the Bein. The Alter Rebbe now explains the difference between them. We explained before that the Bein, a middle person, is incapable of mastering the substance and the essence of Midas, Chesed, Gevura. These things are very difficult of transformation. And therefore, really, we explained before that a Bein cannot transform his character totally. He can make sure not to let his character express itself in a wrong way. And that's the levushim. That's the garments of the character. Because the evil klippa, you have to understand the difference between midas and seichel. Midas is very hard for that is negative to be transformed. If I have a midah ra, if I have a character flaw, it's a very difficult thing to change. Why? Because it doesn't leave. I can harness it. I can compound. I can put it in exile, as the Alter Rebbe says. I can knock it out. But to transform it, maybe only a tzaddik can transform his midas. Now, because the intellect factor, since that of midas, of clippers, draw more vitality from holiness than they do on the level of Chabad, as it's known to the students of Kabbalah. So the shattering of the vessels, explain a little bit, it's a deep Kabbalistic concept, but let's read it. So the shattering of vessels, right? The concept of Toyu, which explains the Chassidus, the shattering of vessels, which brought about the aspect of these sparks that came down to the world, Kedusha sparks, which gave rise to existence of Klippa, occurred primarily in Midas, and is therefore more difficult to elevate evil of Midas. The evil of Chabad, see, if it went down to the concept of those 7 Midas. That's why with the 7 days of the week, the revocation of the week, the rectification of the nation, 7 nations, 70 nations, because it's 7 Midas. It's all symbolic in the number 7 Midas. So there it all came about. That's why the concept of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It came down symbolically into a tree. Really, good and evil is not a concept in a physical thing. It's an attitude. It's a feeling. But nevertheless, it came down into a tree. Ki Adam Eitz Hasada. That's one of the reasons why it says Ki Adam Eitz Hasada. The man is a tree. He's like a tree. He's like in a way, he's his midas. He's his attributes. He's his physical side of him. Even though he has intellect, but he's more Zekal Adam, his midas. That's a real person. A person can have a change of mind. A person actually can have mind over his midas, his heart, but it's not that his mind is going to change his heart totally. So the mind will dominate the heart. The mind will dominate the midas. It doesn't mean the mind's going to say per se will be able to change the midas, because the midas have a very deep place in this whole process. The midas come from an extremely high place. It comes from the Olam HaToyu. That's why in Chassidus, Olam HaSeichel is motikan. Seichel needs to have its place, time. Midas are erratic, they're out of control. That's why midas, compassion and passion and hate and love, these are not things you can put in a bottle per se. You can't. It comes from a very high place. It comes from actually Toyu. That's how you can have unconditional love. You can have a concept of when it comes to anger, mamish can be a terrible situation. It's Avodah Zarah. It can roll into terrible things. We see by people. So why? Because it's uncontainable. It's uncontainable. Midas are not. You cannot say I can contain it. Sometimes I have a situation where I can't control it. Simply can't control it. Why? Because it comes from in Kabbalah. It comes from Olam HaToyu. My midas come from Olam HaToyu. Therefore, the nations of the world, there's 7 nations, 70 nations, needs to be transformed. We need transformation of the nations. That's going to be the concept of Mashiach when the world is transformed. Because ultimately, that is Dina B'Tarteina, the transformation of the nations of the world. The Sheva Midas, the Shivim, the 70 nations. That's really what it's all about. Because that's what we need to accomplish in the world. And it's a much harder thing to accomplish than just to change the minds of people. It's really to change who they are. And that's Midas. The evil of Chabad, however, can be transformed to good through intense study Torah. Thus, we learn two reasons of the authority, the superiority of the mitzvah Torah study. Number one, it is practice with the innermost soul garments of thought. That's number one. It's pnimi. It's an inner concept. Number two is it's transformed the actual soul faculty of Chabad themselves to holiness. And we can do that. And that's why you have the expression of a nuvel b'shus HaTorah. You can have a person that's very smart, even a very learned person, but he doesn't have midas tovos. All his learning, all his intellect has not affected his character. And that could be, he's a Talmud Chacham, he's a great sage, he transformed his intellect. But the question is, did he transform his midas? Did he transform his character? So you have Meir Shalat Alalev, the Mayach rules over the heart, but the question is not the rule over the heart. The question is, does it transform the heart? The Alter Rebbe says a Beini cannot transform his heart. He can rule his heart, he can dominate his heart, and he should dominate his heart, and he should rule his heart. But transformation of heart is not his Avodah. And therefore, maybe his Nefesh HaBahamis, his character, will always have a negative character situation until, as the Alter Rebbe says, it's a ruach tumah v'merares, until the Eibush himself would take away this impurity, this negative from the world. And that's the beauty of learning Torah. Aside from this, there's even another greatness. It's even more important aspect. The Mailas Eisek HaTorah, Talmud Torah, and the superiority of learning Torah, I'll call on mitzvahs and all mitzvahs. According to what we explained before, in the name of the Zohar, the Ramach Pekudin, the Malka, right? The 248 Kudin of the Eibush, the 248 positive commandments, the Malka, are called the limbs of the king. That's the way the 248 mitzvahs are the limbs of the king. What does it mean? Just like the limb of the human body is receptacle and corresponding to the soul faculties, so to each mitzvah is a receptacle for a corresponding expression of divine will of God. So there's 248 wills of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they have many offshoots. But in general, the 248 wills of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the will of God. Concerning the Torah, however, it's written in Tikkun Zohar, Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one. Unlike mitzvahs, which is concept of a limb, it's a vessel. It's a vessel for godliness. Torah is godliness. The Zohar says that the Torah and God is one. There's no difference between the Torah, what God is in the Torah. It's not a vehicle for anything. It's not there to have godliness in it. It is God. Alter Rebbe now elucidates this difference. Just like, take an example. From my own body, I can see godliness. So let me learn from my body. There's no comparison to the energy of the soul in his brain to the energy of the soul that comes down to the limbs of the body. Right? You cannot live without your brain. Chas v'shalom. But you can live without a limb. So there's no comparison to the same vitality that comes from the brain, the intellect, which is divided into three faculties of Chacham and Das. So you can't compare the brain of the soul, the intellect of the soul, to what comes into the body. Every limb of the body is, of course, bound to the soul, which applies its life. Yet there are two separate entities which have joined together. It is otherwise, however, the relation between the one's intellect and his soul. The intellect is an extension and part of his soul itself. Thus, its unity with the soul is not in two separate entities which have been joined together, but two components as a whole. This difference between the limbs and the intellect illustrates the difference between other mitzvahs and the study of Torah. The study of Torah is God. That means when a Jew learns Torah, he grasps God. Pashit takes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Simply he grasps the Eibishter. The Eibishter gave us a capability not to just bring an oir into ourselves. When we learn Torah, we actually simply grasp, take in with ourselves God. That's why the expression Kehem Chayenu Ve'erech Emenu V'Hanega Yom V'Layla. That's what the pasuk says, that we should realize that the Torah is Chayenu. Torah is our life. Ve'erech Emenu. It's the length of our days. It is the ultimate concept in what a human being can do in this world, is simply to learn Torah. V'gisa, that's what the Torah says. V'gisa b'yom v'layla. That a Jew should really sit and learn Torah 24/7 because nothing else important to him. And then the learning of Torah, there's nothing greater to him. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. There's nothing greater that a Jew can accomplish is to take some time in the day and learn Torah. Open up a Chumash, open a Gemara, open a Shulchan Aruch, open a Tanya, whatever it might be. Because when you learn Torah, you're simply bringing into my Chabad, my wisdom, God. Not God's wisdom, God. And that's why the most powerful thing of transformation is Torah, is the learning of Torah. That's what the Gemara says. If your Yetzer Hara comes and bothers you, what you should do? Schlep him into a class. Bring him into shul. Go and learn. See what happens. So too, just in the case of human beings, so too in the way of an analogy. Self-consider this is an analogy, allowing the qualification that any comparison between the human and divine traits must be distant. Lahavdil berivas havdalas. The Alter Rebbe says, I'm not comparing a human being to God. It's derech mashal. It's an analogy. And chas v'shalom, if whatever you're going to say in a human being, to God it's even much more bigger. It's not even, you can't even say bigger and smaller. It's a whole different reality. Laying kates by myriads of degrees. Oris ain't saved baruch hu. When you, with regard to the illumination of infinite godliness, the infinite light of God, which the light himself clothes itself into a mitzvah of action. There's no comparison. We did the light that comes into a mitzvah. There's no comparison. The way a light comes in through a mitzvah, which is unbelievable, to the way what happens when you sit and learn Torah. Because then then you simply grab God, as he says, illumination commensurate the level of each man's intellect and his grasp of Torah. To the extent that his intellect grasps the Torah in which he studies, it is united with godliness, with a unity comparable to that of one's intellect to his soul. Herein then lies the superiority of Torah over other mitzvahs, even over charity. Torah study affects a much higher level of unity with God than mitzvahs of action. That's it. There's no greater unity, as Alter Rebbe explained in the 5th chapter of Tanya. There's no greater unity with a human being and God but through the learning of Torah. There's no greater revelation in this world than the mitzvah. But there's no greater unity. That's what we're looking for. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We're looking for unity with God. That comes through my Havana. That comes through taking my Chachma Bina Das, my wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and simply bringing into it, elevating it, and bringing it into refining it, and bringing it into the Chachmas of the Eibishter. I make my Chachma the Chachma of the Eibishter. Even though that I am a physical person, And everything that I comprehend with my physical brain. So in physical terms, the law concerning two men who clutch a garment or one who trades a cow for a donkey, right? So when you learn the Torah, you open a Gemara, Baba Kamba, Baba Metzia, and you sit and learn the Gemara. What's the Gemara talking about? Cows, cow goring cow, two people fighting over a talis. I trade a cow for a donkey. All these laws that are connected to cows. I mean, you have all laws, there's a lot of laws connected to cows. How can then be said that through the Torah's law, one can attain the lofty level of Yuntegov when I'm talking about cows? So that's the beautiful thing that Alter Rebbe is going to say now. Because we always have the expression, Torah nimshel kamayim. The Torah is compared to as water. And it's a beautiful analogy that Alter Rebbe explains what is the meaning that the Torah is compared to water. There's many different reasons why the Torah is compared to water. Water is life. Torah is life. But the meaning that the Gemara says, Torah nimshel mayim ma mayim sheyodim bakum gdei l'gveya l'makom namach. The Gemara says that the Torah is compared to water because water, just like water comes from a high place and it comes down to a low place, so the Torah came from heaven, came from a very high place to a low place. But there's a much more deeper meaning to this. That the Torah that came from a high place, just like water that comes from a high place, the same water that's in the high place is in the low place. There's no change in the water that came rain down from heaven. There's no change in the water. The water is the same water that came from a high place. And the same water is in the low place. That's the meaning of the Gemara. That the Torah that came from a very high place, from the wisdom of God, is in the ox. Came down into the law of an ox, or the law of two people arguing over talis, or the law of a person that wants to buy an ox wants to change his ox for his donkey, a donkey for an ox. That's what the meaning of the Gemara. Yet the Torah is likened to water descends from a high place. The water on the lower level is exactly the same as the water on the higher level. It didn't change. The water didn't change. Torah nitzchias. Torah doesn't change. Torah penetrates every intellectual concept. Torah is a transformation of intellect. Because the Torah doesn't change. Similarly, the law of the Torah, although they descend to deal with ordinary physical situations of oxes, situations of ditches, situations of talesim, argument over a piece of cloth. That same Torah, that very lofty Torah, Chachma of the Eibishter came down to that basic concept, didn't change. Why? Because it is God. And God doesn't change. Ni Hashem Leisha Nisi, I'm God, I don't change. Still consists of the Torah's will and wisdom. Thus, in studying Torah, one is united with God's will and with wisdom, and thereby God Himself. Shbail El, as explained above. And that completes the Tanya of the day. What a beautiful Tanya, what should I tell you? Today is the 28th day of the month. The Tillim for the day is chapter 135 to chapter 139. The Rebbe writes today in the Ayom Yom, Sicha, writing of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Brit Milah, on a circumcision. He wrote, at a Brit Milah, we say, just as he entered into the covenant, so may he enter into Torah, into marriage and good deeds. It's our custom to make an advance payment on tuition fees for a child. And some money said, so it means the custom was that when you're at the bris, you should go over to a school, if there's a principal of school, and you give him money so that you sign up your child already in your yeshiva. Give him a down payment so that the kid is already enrolled in yeshiva already, in school. So that was the custom. That was the custom. Whenever you had whenever they had a son and they had a bris, they would go right away over to the school and give them some money and say, because he said, I'm going to bring up to Torah, so I got to start paying for it. So I'm starting to pay my tuition. That you're gonna enroll my son in the Mitzvah into school. So I already signed him up, and that's a Chabad tradition. If you make a bris of a child, a grandchild, sign him up right away into a school. Give it down payment into Jewish school. So your statement has some validity. You did an action. Not only you said you're going to bring it up for Torah Master, you made actually a commitment. You gave money to the school that you're signing up. I wish you all a wonderful day. Tomorrow is a special day. Shabbos Mevorchen, the month of Nisan. Shabbos HaChodesh, the month of the blessing of the month and the reading of HaChodesh Hazel Lechem Reis Chodashim. Sunday is Reis Chodesh itself. Mitzvah Sunday we're going to do it a little, not a we're gonna do it later. We're gonna have to do it. Oh, Sunday. We'll have to get back to you on Sunday. What time we're gonna do it? We'll have to get back to you because I'm traveling on Sunday and Abba is not here either on Sunday. So Sunday is actually my mother's yard site. I'm going to New York for my mother's yard site. It's my Sabbath is going to be. I'm sorry to be able to do it at 10 a.m. That's the best time for me to do it. But I'll text everybody what time I have there. I hope you're on my text. And we'll do it sometimes on Sunday.
So no Tanya class.